Hey guys, Tom Cicillo Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review Room for Rent. Um, Featuring Lin Shaye, the lady from the, what, I forget what movie it is now. Oh my god, it's so bad. Anyway, Room for Rent. Um, this movie is about this lady who is, older, living by herself, doing up things. Um, so she had recently dealt with someone passing away. I believe it was her husband. She is dealing with that, taking care of it. Sort of goes about her own business. But she learns that she owes quite a bit of money due to the passing and the money being transferred over to her. So she has to deal with quite a bit of that, and she comes across this little news or this little paper thing that talks about or pamphlet that talks about creating some sort of hotel thing. So she decides that she's gonna sign up to create a bed and breakfast. She invites two individuals, and she treats them rather nicely, but they leave relatively quickly. And she sort of suggests to the woman, these two people are dating, the guy doesn't seem very nice, and she's saying things like that because he's kind of being aggressive or whatever. So they eventually both leave, and she kind of goes out on her own way, out and about. She's watching these skater kids do whatever. They sort of hit on her for some reason, and it becomes way worse later on. But they sorry for the lag, or pause there. If you want to support me and prevent that from ever happening again, then please check out the link in the description. It'll head you over to my Patreon page, and I will use that money to get a new laptop to prevent that, hopefully, from happening ever again. So with that being said, she essentially does that, gets assaulted by these younger lads. So she goes back home, doing it up bed and breakfast style. She's introduced to this guy named Bob, who she becomes infatuated with. He's a biker, he's into sports, he seems to be pretty casual guy, in terms of attitude. So she's totally wanting to be with him in a more romantic sense. So later on, she eventually gets bullied by the same younger lads again. The one that was talking to her the first time gets up close and personal, touching her, lifting up her skirt. Some guy intervenes at some point, and then she's still freaking out regardless. So she goes back, and from time to time she's writing letters to that first woman. I think the main character's name is Joyce, and I think the woman she's writing to is something else. I don't remember. If I had my notes up, I would say it, but I don't. So, because it would cause more lag, and I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible. So anyways, she's going off the hinges, studying this man, using his items, personal items, when he's not around, doing things like that. Eventually, she's making more and more contact with this other lady, this younger lady, um, to the point where all the while she's trying to become invested in all the things he likes via sports, via anything else. She's trying her best to be like, yeah, sports, woo, stuff like that. And eventually gets to the point where when she was contacting that other lady, she eventually shows that she's going to come back for a short visit. So she's like, yay. Joyce, I'll just call her Joyce for the time being, if that's correct, eventually invites her in. She learned about Bob via the letters. Bob is the guy, if I didn't mention that before. Bob and this new lady, the lady from before, I should say, are talking up a storm, getting to know each other, if you know what I mean. And yes, it does go all the way, and I mean all the way with those two. But Joyce knows and figures this out. She was not far enough, or she was close enough, I should say, rather, to hear their little escapade of sex when they were feeling each other up, and then they totally made out, and they totally went for it. Which led to Lynn's character totally getting like angry, like throwing a fit the next day around, just being upset in general. This causes tension between the three. And this lady's trying to figure out what's going on, so she's like, sort of, eventually at some point, she's like, let me check in with the neighbor, or whatever. Eventually, Joyce goes over afterwards, and, in a fit of rage, if you will, decides to kill the neighbor. And the title in the bottom there, she killed to find a decent man. This is where the killing starts to happen. So it turns out that the character we are following is actually the bad guy. Huh? Would you look at that? So she's officially gone nuts. She killed. She played it off like, oh, she committed suicide or something like that. She's like crying along with some other woman, and playing it up. So yeah, the escalation of the whole thing with Bob is that she's like, he's like starting to like question her too at some point. His little outbursts seem to come more out of nowhere, I feel anyway. Yeah, like he just sort of, like, he was like, yeah, sure, fine, she was in his room, and then she kind of says like, oh, I was just cleaning up, and he's like, you shouldn't do that. But then, at this point, this second outburst is more like, oh, I'm on to you. Like, okay, why? Like, what led Bob to figure all this out? I'm sorry, I kind of missed a scene, or a scene didn't happen where, like, some sort of suspicious activity led to Bob figuring all of this out, or at least some of it out anyway. But nonetheless, the other lady already left at this point. She said like she needed a break or whatever to go up and do something or other. After some bar shenanigans with our Joyce character and the whole spreading of information or whatever. It all comes to a swerve where, again, Bob is somehow, for whatever reason, like totally suspicious for some reason, and yells at her, and then she yells back, and then kills him. Or, yeah, she does kill him too. Eventually drags his body out to the back, buries it, tries to rekindle the friendship with other lady, does so. She says she's gonna leave her to that place and then, like, sort of just leave and do her own thing. Sorry for the cut. I was so close to being done with my review and then someone interrupted. I wish I had a studio, but I can't afford that, and I don't even know if they make studios here where I live, so... Being a small YouTuber, this is what happens when you're a small YouTuber. You do just nothing you can do about these things. Anywho, so yeah, as I was saying, she kills him. She patches things up with the other lady. She gets her to come over. And then she just leaves? And that's the end of the movie. She just leaves. Like, okay. And then it shows like a baby crib or whatever. But whatever. That was Room for Rent. It's not great. Yeah, there are definitely some pieces missing here in terms of being a complete story. Again, Bob figuring out like how she was getting this way comes out of nowhere. I don't mind her being us as the audience following an antagonist, a killer, but it still has to make sense. Like, Bob figuring it out, that's like the most out of nowhere thing that happens in this movie. I feel like she's okay in this movie in terms of her doing her own thing. I'd give it a 5 out of 10, I think. It's a halfway decent flick, I suppose. Perhaps even a dip into 4 out of 10 for the out of nowhere, like, shift that happens. It's a pretty big out of nowhere shift, so probably a 4 out of 10. And that's my review for Room for Rent. And if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.